You can watch Tiffany Stratton own the spotlight in the ring, but the moment you trace which WWE names were tied to her off camera,
So we've actually been dating for, it's gonna be 2 years in May.
the story gets a lot messier.
If I take that title, does that mean he comes with me?
Some matches look obvious, and one changes the whole way you read her rise. In wrestling, love stories rarely stay private for long. The cameras are always rolling, the internet never sleeps, and the rumor mill runs on jet fuel. But somehow, for nearly 3 years, Tiffany Stratton and Ludwig Kaiser managed to do what almost no one in WWE can pull off. They kept their relationship almost entirely out of the spotlight. It started inside the Performance Center in Orlando. Two ambitious wrestlers, both on the rise, both orbiting the same system. By both accounts, there was undeniable attraction and an equally stubborn refusal to make the first move. Until a birthday weekend in early May 2022 forced the issue. A night out, a standoff, and a game of rock, paper, scissors to decide who had to ask the other one out. Their first date followed at Crest Steakhouse in Orlando. May 4th became their anniversary. What came next was something genuinely rare in WWE. A relationship built almost entirely away from the cameras. No on-screen angles, no scripted tension. Just two wrestlers quietly navigating one of the most demanding schedules in professional sports. And once the draft split them onto separate brands, seeing each other for a couple of days at a time whenever the calendar allowed. Both acknowledged the difficulty publicly. Neither turned it into drama. If you want to understand what the relationship looked like at its strongest, look at what Kaiser did in February 2025. When Stratton captured the WWE Women's Championship, he flew in to be there, the same way he'd shown up for her NXT Women's Championship win years earlier. In his own words, he'd seen her through the lows and the highs. In a world where wrestlers perform emotion for a living, a quiet flight to watch someone you love achieve their dream is about as real as it gets. Through late 2024 and into early 2025, everything still appeared intact. Stratton was openly acknowledging Kaiser as her boyfriend.
So we've actually been dating for, it's gonna be 2 years in May.
Kaiser was speaking about her career with unmistakable pride. From the outside, there was nothing that looked like an ending approaching. Then, nothing. No announcement, no statement, no dramatic public falling out. By February 2026, coverage of Stratton moving on with someone new referenced Kaiser in the past tense, the relationship described as having ended sometime the previous year. That's the entire public record of the breakup. A few words in someone else's story about her next chapter. In an era where celebrity relationships collapse loudly, receipts, subtweets, tell-all interviews, Stratton and Kaiser apparently just closed the door quietly. Whether that speaks to mutual respect, private pain, or simply two people who had always guarded their relationship choosing to guard its ending too, nobody outside their circle really knows. What the record gives us is a relationship that lasted roughly 3 years, survived brutal schedules and opposite brands, produced genuine moments of warmth, and ended without a single dramatic headline to mark its passing. In a business where everything is designed to be seen, that kind of exit might be the most remarkable thing about it. For months, Tiffany Stratton was hiding someone in plain sight. No announcement, no formal introduction, just breadcrumbs, a body frame in the background of a photo, a distinctive tattoo caught in the corner of a shot, glimpses carefully cropped, carefully framed, just enough to make people look, never enough to give them anything definitive. The wrestling internet, predictably, turned itself into a detective agency overnight. What made the speculation more layered was who the mystery man turned out to be. Shady El Nahas had only officially entered WWE developmental in May 2025 when the company announced the signing of 3 former Olympians, El Nahas among them, a decorated judoka stepping into the most unpredictable athletic theater on the planet. One person is already at the top of the card, another still learning the system she'd graduated from years earlier. The contrast was hard to ignore, but the story was more complicated than the optics suggested. Then came the detail that sent everything into overdrive. Fans noticed that El Nahas had a tattoo on his forearm. Not her name, not a symbol, but a tattoo of Tiffany Stratton's eyes. That kind of detail doesn't stay quiet. It transformed cautious speculation into something louder and harder to dismiss, giving the whole situation a reckless, all-in intensity before Tiffany had explained a single thing about it publicly. What nobody knew yet was that she had helped come up with the idea herself. The confirmation arrived February 22nd, 2026. No magazine exclusive, no PR statement, just a 20-photo dump posted on her own timeline, on her own terms. Outlets treated it as the definitive end of months of speculation. elimination. And when Tiffany explained her reasoning, the framing was telling. No hesitation, no sense of being cornered. Her explanation was simple. When she really loves somebody, she wants to show them off. The months of half reveals weren't reluctant. They were built up. As for the tattoo, she confirmed she'd shown him the concept first, and he was immediately on board. What looked from the outside like a wild, unilateral declaration was actually something more conspiratorial. Two people choosing together to mark the relationship with something dramatic and permanent. The public record on this one is still in its opening act. There's no breakup chapter, no quiet separation, no final interview explaining what went wrong, because publicly, nothing has. What exists is a beginning and a reveal, delivered with the kind of all-in confidence that makes people pay attention fast. The rest is still being written. Some rivalries in professional wrestling are built on championships. Some are built on respect, or the lack of it. And some, the most dangerous kind, are built on the idea that one person is willing to take absolutely everything from another. That was the foundation of what happened between Tiffany Stratton and Liv Morgan in the fall of 2024. And caught directly in the crossfire, whether he wanted to be or not, was Dominic Mysterio. Make no mistake, this was never a love story. It was a power play. One of the most precisely targeted, psychologically sharp pieces of character work Tiffany Stratton had produced in her young main roster career. And for a few electric weeks, it worked almost perfectly. To understand the angle, you have to understand the context. By October 2024, Tiffany Stratton was holding the Money in the Bank briefcase, professional wrestling's most dangerous weapon. A guaranteed title shot, cashed in at any moment, without warning. Every women's champion on the roster was sleeping with one eye open. Liv Morgan, as women's world champion, was the biggest target of all. The collision course became official on a night that started as a tag match and ended in chaos. After the bout broke down, Nia Jax interfering, bodies everywhere, order completely gone, Tiffany saw her opening and moved toward a cash-in on the vulnerable champion. She nearly got there. The thing that stopped her? Dominic Mysterio. He was part of Liv's escape, part of her protection, part of the wall standing between Tiffany and the title she wanted. And in that single moment, without a word being spoken about romance or rivalry, Dominic was written into Tiffany's story, whether anyone planned it that way or not. The machine had handed her a pressure point. It would only be a matter of time before she used it. What made Tiffany's subsequent flirtation with the Dominic angle so effective was that it was never portrayed as genuine attraction. It was played as arrogance, pure, surgical, weaponized arrogance. Tiffany Stratton has always been at her most compelling when she operates from the unshakable belief that the world belongs to her by default. Not because she clawed her way to the top through sacrifice and struggle, but because she simply considers herself above everyone else, more polished, more valuable, more entitled to whatever she decides she wants. So when she started hinting that Dominic could come along with Liv's title, the energy wasn't romantic. It was predatory in the most theatrical wrestling sense possible. The message was clear. I can take your championship. I can take your spotlight. And if I feel like it, I can take your man too. It was smug. It was petty. It was a little ridiculous. And it was absolutely perfect for the character she had spent months building. The angle crystallized in mid-November when Tiffany, asked directly about Liv and Dominic in an interview, leaned into the chaos rather than deflecting it. She suggested that maybe, just maybe, if she cashed in on Liv, Dominic might come with the title. That single line did exactly what it was designed to do. It made Liv furious. It kept Dominic's name circulating through every conversation about the women's division, and it tapped into something WWE had been building for months: Dominic's now legendary reputation as professional wrestling's ultimate relationship catastrophe. First Rhea Ripley, then Liv Morgan, a rotating carousel of manipulation, jealousy, possessiveness, and fan outrage that had turned him into the most chaotic romantic figure on the roster. Tiffany didn't need to build a whole story, she just needed to suggest one. That suggestion alone was enough to make fans wonder if they were about to watch another chapter of the Dominic Mysterio relationship disaster unfold in real time. Liv's response confirmed that the needle had moved. She didn't answer Tiffany like this was purely a championship dispute. She drew a line, publicly, personally, and with unmistakable fury. Stay away from her title, stay away from her world, stay away from Dominic Mysterio. That warning told told you everything about what the angle had become. Tiffany was no longer just another challenger circling a briefcase cash-in. She had become something more destabilizing, a threat to Liv's control over her entire presentation. The title, the man, the image, the security, all of it suddenly felt like it could be stripped away at once. But here is where the story gets honest with itself. Even at its most electric, the Dominic angle was always a side thread, a sharp one, a memorable one, but a side thread nonetheless. WWE never slowed down to build it into something more. There were no loaded backstage scenes between Tiffany and Dominic, no moment where Liv walked in on something and the story detonated. The company gave the audience just enough heat to spark genuine interest, then kept the larger machinery moving, because bigger things were in motion. War Games season was approaching, faction storylines were consuming the division. Tiffany's real destination was never Dominic Mysterio, it was championship gold. When she finally cashed in her briefcase in January 2025, she chose Nia Jax, not Liv Morgan. That decision quietly closed the door on everything the angle had suggested, and in hindsight, it reframed the entire episode with perfect clarity. Dominic was never the prize, he was the pressure point, the tool Tiffany deployed to make a title threat feel personal, invasive, and impossible to ignore. He made a straightforward Money in the Bank setup feel like something messier, something more dangerous, something that could blow up in multiple directions at once. In professional wrestling, messier almost always means more memorable. Even Dominic later spoke about the episode the way you'd reference a footnote, not a lost love story, not a major turning point, but one more bizarre installment in the ongoing absurdist drama of his on-screen romantic life. That's the most accurate verdict on the whole thing. Tiffany Stratton and Dominic Mysterio were never a romance. They were a provocation, a few weeks of precisely targeted psychological warfare dressed up in the language of desire. It started with Tiffany hunting Liv's title. It escalated when she suggested Dominic was part of the package. It peaked when Liv drew her line in the sand. And it ended when the booking moved on to stories that were always going to matter more. The reason it still lives in people's memories isn't because it went deep, it's because it went sharp. Tiffany found the exact nerve to hit, and for one brief, perfectly calibrated stretch of television, she hit it without missing once. Not every story in wrestling is built to last. Some are built to destabilize, small, targeted, and precisely timed to detonate inside something that was already cracking. The brief, flickering tease between Tiffany Stratton and Josh Briggs in late 2023 was exactly that kind of story. It was never a romance. It was a grenade rolled into a room full of existing tension, and Fallon Henley was standing closest to it when it went off. To understand why the angle worked at all, you have to understand the state of the Briggs-Jensen-Henley trio heading into the fall of 2023. On the surface, things looked stable. The three had survived earlier drama, a messy period involving Kiana James and Brooks Jensen that had briefly fractured their chemistry, and by late 2023, they were back functioning as a unit, repaired, reunited, moving forward. But professional wrestling groups that have already broken once carry a specific kind of fragility. The trust is rebuilt, but the memory of the break never fully disappears. One wrong move, one outside intrusion, one moment where old insecurities resurface, and the whole structure becomes vulnerable again. Tiffany Stratton had already given Fallon Henley personal reasons to simmer. In November 2023, Tiffany had beaten Fallon to qualify for the Women's Iron Survivor Challenge. Both had then competed in that match at Deadline. The competitive friction between them was real, documented, and unresolved. The stage was already set. Tiffany just needed to find the right moment to strike. It arrived on the November 21st, 2023 episode of NXT. Josh Briggs had just pulled off one of the biggest wins of his singles career, shocking Carmelo Hayes to qualify for the Men's Iron Survivor Challenge. The locker room energy was high. It was exactly the kind of moment that draws people in, the gravity of a breakthrough win pulling everyone toward the celebration. And then Tiffany Stratton walked in to offer her congratulations. WWE's own coverage flagged the moment with barely concealed glee, running the backstage segment under the headline, "Josh Briggs gets congratulated by Tiffany Stratton?" When Fallon and Jensen arrived moments later to find Tiffany already there, already in the middle of Briggs' moment, the reaction was immediate. Fallon didn't like it, not even a little. What's important here is what Tiffany actually did, which was almost nothing. No grand gesture, no loaded physical contact, no dramatic declaration. She simply inserted herself into a moment that wasn't hers, at a time she knew Fallon would eventually walk through that door, in a way that was designed to register as a presence that didn't belong there. In the architecture of professional wrestling storytelling, that kind of restraint is often more effective than anything louder. Tiffany didn't need to make a move on Briggs, she just needed to be there. The discomfort did the rest. The angle deepened in the weeks that followed Deadline, where both Briggs and Henley had fallen short in their respective Iron Survivor matches. Backstage tensions within the group reportedly came to a head at the event itself. Harsh words exchanged in the aftermath of back-to-back losses by two of its three members. Then, on the December 12th episode of NXT, Tiffany reappeared. During a six-person mixed tag match involving Briggs, Jensen, and Henley against Meta 4, she came out of nowhere and attacked Fallon directly, turning what had been a subtle jealousy tease into something more openly aggressive. Briggs still helped his team win, but the damage had already been done in a different arena entirely, because at this point, the story had quietly shifted. It was no longer really about whether Tiffany was interested in Briggs. It was about the fact that she kept finding ways to get under Fallon's skin, and Briggs kept getting caught in the middle of it, an unwilling fulcrum between a woman he called his friend and one who seemed to delight in making that friendship feel unstable. In wrestling terms, it was a classic secondary pressure angle, small on its own, enormously useful for what it was doing to everything around it. The ending arrived on December 26, 2023, and it wasn't romantic. It wasn't even particularly dramatic. It was just a group acknowledging, quietly and without ceremony, that they had run out of road. Briggs had snapped during a match against Noam Dar, getting himself disqualified in a moment of frustration that said everything about where his head was. In the backstage fallout that followed, the three came together and made it official. They were going their separate ways. The reasons, as reported, were stated plainly. Briggs wanted to prove himself as a singles wrestler, and Fallon, by her own admission, couldn't get over her issues with Tiffany Stratton. That's the closing line of the entire angle. Not a romantic resolution, not a confrontation between Tiffany and Briggs, just a trio finally fracturing, with Tiffany Stratton's name cited as one of the two reasons it happened. The loose ends tied themselves off quickly. On January 2nd, 2024, Fallon beat Tiffany in a stipulation match that forced Tiffany to spend a day as her ranch hand, another chapter in what WWE was now openly calling their bitter rivalry. Briggs, meanwhile, was already being referred to as the newly solo Josh Briggs within a week of the split, his story moving cleanly into a singles trajectory with no romantic subplot attached. The Tiffany Briggs tease, such as it was, had already ceased to exist the moment it had served its purpose, and that is the most honest way to characterize the whole episode. It was never designed to be a full story. It was designed to be a lever, something Tiffany could use to apply pressure to a relationship that was already showing fault lines, at a moment when Fallon's emotional investment made her the perfect target. Short, sharp, disposable by design. Tiffany Stratton walked into Josh Briggs's moment, let Fallon's imagination do the heavy lifting, and walked away having contributed to the collapse of an entire faction without ever making a single concrete move. That, in its own understated way, might be the most Tiffany Stratton thing she did all year. Some stories in wrestling grow out of carefully constructed television segments and weeks of deliberate buildup. And then there are the other kinds, the ones that materialize out of a 30-second backstage clip, get supercharged by fan speculation, and collapse the moment anyone involved refuses to play along. The Logan Paul and Tiffany Stratton situation was emphatically the second kind. The origin traces to January 2025 and a backstage clip that began circulating with the quiet momentum these things build before anyone realizes what's happening. Logan approached Stratton to offer congratulations and then kept talking. He told her he saw something of himself in her. He mentioned her moonsault. He positioned himself with the particular brand of unsolicited confidence that has become his most recognizable personality trait as someone with wisdom to share, in a conversation with a woman who had significantly more in-ring experience than he did. The wrestling internet rewound it, debated it, and started asking questions. What transformed an awkward exchange into genuine drama was one complicating factor: Ludwig Kaiser. Stratton was publicly in a relationship with her fellow roster member member at the time. The moment that context entered the conversation, the clip stopped being analyzed as a mentorship moment and started being processed as something more loaded. No creative team had decided to build a storyline around it. No writer had manufactured the tension. The rumor didn't need one. It wrote itself. By February 2025, the noise had grown loud enough to reach Logan's own platform. On Impulsive, with Michael Cole as guest, he addressed it directly, and with the kind of defensive specificity that tends to make dismissals sound more complicated than intended. His version, he was only being friendly. The real culprit was producer Michael Hayes, whose joke about flirting had apparently mutated into a full narrative. As for Kaiser, Logan claimed he'd attempted to confront him backstage, chair in hand. He called the whole thing a dumb narrative and insisted he wasn't trying to cause drama. It was a denial that confirmed just enough to keep the story breathing. Briefly, Tiffany ended it. Her response was unambiguous. She rejected the flirtation narrative entirely, described Logan's approach as him acting like he had something to teach her, and made clear she hadn't received the interaction warmly. She didn't tease it. She didn't leave any mystery. She treated it like something that didn't deserve the oxygen it was receiving. And just like that, it was over. No television segment was ever built around it. No jealousy promo. No match. Even the detail fans most wanted to connect, that Stratton had reportedly been booked for Impulsive and canceled, was never publicly confirmed as related to any of this. People drew that line themselves. The record doesn't draw it for them. A backstage conversation, a podcast clarification, a firm denial. Let us know your thoughts in the comment section, and before you leave, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to Wrestle Rivals so you don't miss the next ones.